Hello and welcome to the Papare.com and of course Dialogue Television as we bring you a look back on the last 7 weeks of action in this Nippon Paint Rugby League 2023-24. We might have a new champion, we never know. There's 4 more weeks for us to find that out, of course, well maybe 3 more weeks. But let's look at the first half of this tournament where everyone plays everyone else on a round-robin basis, and we separate the top 4 teams from the bottom 4 teams, the top 4 going in for the Cup Championship and of course the bottom 4 playing for the Plate Championship. Looking back at all that action, joining me today is Romario de Silva.
Hi Shanaka. Some great rugby was on show during the past 7 weeks of exhilarating rugby, and thankfully we have seen that Kandy have been beaten, and it's good to see that Kandy have been beaten for Sri Lanka rugby as well, because there is some competition happening in the program, and also CR and FC are topping the table, so some good signs for all the viewers.
Well, I don't know what the Kandy viewers watching at home will think when we say thankfully Romario, because they are die-hard fans of their team. But yes, it is good to have a probably different champion coming up. Kandy have been dominant for the last 20 years and more, and I think only Havelocks have won 1 trophy and Navy have won 1 trophy in the whole of this century. So I think it might be good for the rest of the teams as well to feel that they are a little bit more competitive. So let's look at how things stand at the moment. We've got the second round coming up where the top 4, that's Kandy, CR, CH and Havelocks play each other, and of course the bottom 4 with the Forces teams making up most of that, all of that bottom 4 actually. And let's look at how the points table stands at the moment. So if you look at CR and FC right on top at the end, they are unbeaten. They're the only unbeaten team at the moment. And the really interesting stat for me on that CR and FC column or the CR and FC row, Romario, is that they have conceded only 84 points. So I think one thing that we really need to give coach Dushant Leuke and his team credit for is the fact that their defense has been the best in the league this season.
Yes, indeed. Their defense has come up trumps at the most wanted stages, and even in the game against Kandy, they were under the pump in the second half after Kandy scored twice early on, but their defense turned up from then on, and they managed to shut down Kandy, and they managed just a try at the end, a consolation try for Kandy. So I think that is a great point that you have pointed out, that they have conceded only 84 points throughout these first 7 games, and in retrospect Kandy have conceded 126 points. So Kandy's defense has not held as firm as CR and FC.
Yes, and it's very interesting to show that CR have conceded only 9 tries against, 3 of those coming, or 4 of those actually coming in that Kandy game. And so that means that the rest of the season, in all those 6 matches that they played, they conceded only 5 tries in those games. So that's a really important statistic. But for Kandy, of course, you've got your X-factor players, the guys who can really take the game away from them. But it shows like they've been relying a little bit too much on them. They've got 200 plus points on the board as well. So that shows their attack is going well. But 126 points conceded, which means that defense is where problems have started appearing.
Yes, indeed. Usually the saying goes, attack wins you matches, but defense wins you titles, and I think that's something that CR and FC must be building on. And for Kandy, of course, they will have to tighten their screws a bit more, as their next 3 games, all 3 are down in Colombo. So things are only going to get tougher from there on.
Yeah, absolutely. Travelling is something that Kandy does not do as well as defending their home fortress of Nittawala. That said, of course, they have set very high standards in Nittawala. So even when they do travel, even if they're a little less potent than they are in Nittawala, that has been enough to win them several titles in the last 2 decades. So let's wait and see how this goes, because Kandy have never really had to suffer a loss. And how a champion team comes back from a loss is also very important, Romario, because we need to remember that these are guys who are not used to losing. This will hurt them. Guys like Nigel Ratwatta, Tarinder Ratwatta, Srinath Surya Bandar, they're not used to losing games. They're not used to being in second place. So this is going to really galvanize them, and I'm sure we're going to see the best of those guys and the rest of the team as well when it comes into the second round. CHNFC and Havelocks, the other 2 teams in the championship. And if you remember, we did start this season with a lot of rain. Romario. There was a huge amount of rain. We were playing on really muddy pitches and things like that. And that's when these 2 teams played each other as well, CH and Havies. And so we can't really take a lot away from those games because there's a lowest common denominator, which is the ground conditions. But of CH and Havelocks, who do you think have been looking better?
I think CHNFC, they got going at the end, latter part of the first round, but Havelocks, unfortunately, they fell away a bit. So I think CHNFC are getting started at the correct time, and now they face off against Kandy in Colombo. So they will have a great opportunity. And also on the points table, it's just 10 points separating Kandy and CH, and 12 points separating Havelocks and Kandy. So there is a bit of a gap, but a gap that they can close on if they manage to beat Kandy in the next couple of weeks. So I think Havelocks is the team that is gaining momentum, and CH as well, they will look to just pile on to the pressure that CR have managed to put on Kandy.
Yes, absolutely, and just 2 points between them, even though Havelocks have a loss more than CHNFC, which means that Havelocks will be fancying their chances. I think they've looked the second best team in the competition, Romario, so far, but they've suffered a few key injuries, and I think CHNFC also will be hoping that they're able to keep this entire squad fit, because like we saw in last year's World Cup, key injuries are going to play a part in this whole tournament, and especially when you come to the section where you're playing quality opposition every week. It's going to get more and more intense, and those injuries are going to mount up for all these top 4 teams. Looking at the bottom half of the draw as well, Romario, we have Police, Air Force, Army and Navy. Navy being one of the only teams to have won a title in this century of Kandy. They find themselves now at the bottom, and obviously that's a lot to do with funding for all these police, Army, Navy and Air Force teams. They're not finding the same kind of talent that they did before, and they're not being able to afford the same amount of resources as well, which is something that's not great for Sri Lanka rugby.
Yes, and actually with the forces struggling, it's not a good sight for any sport in Sri Lanka. But given the fact that Navy lost close to 7 to 10 players to CH and other clubs, and of course Army will be really disappointed with what they have put on this season. They did come out with a good couple of shows, but unfortunately they could not build on that victories. And Yafos and Police will be two other teams also who will be really disappointed, especially Police. They did manage to get a good side built up, but unfortunately nothing has gone their way this season, and that's why they find themselves in 5th place.
Some really close games though, even though these teams don't register many wins. Some close games where superior conditioning has just pulled the other clubs away from them in the last few minutes of the game. But I think it's going to be a competitive affair down in that play championship. All these teams will fancy their chances, and even though Navy have still not won a game in this whole 2023-24 season, I think they will really fancy their chances come the second round. So let's see how that goes. Let's talk about the match of the first round, Romario, and that was undoubtedly CRNFC versus Kandy. Everybody thinking that, okay, maybe this is the year that Kandy might fall off their pedestal. CR were absolutely determined to make sure that this was the year. The last time that they actually managed this feat was in 2021, and ex-Sri Lanka rugby president Lasitha Gunaratne even made a comeback for that game. So that's how long that's been since we've seen Kandy win. Dushant Liuke started off as a player also in that same year, playing his club system. So he's gone through that entire gamut, playing for CH, playing for Kandy for many years, coming back to CR, not winning a title as a player with CR, but now he has a chance to do it as a coach as well. So that's how long it's been since Kandy actually lost in Nittavala. So it's a momentous occasion, and I think all the other 7 clubs would have been happy. Kandy's fans obviously won't be happy because they don't even know what losing looks like. So how did you feel that game went? You were there, Romario, you were lucky enough to be there. What was the atmosphere on the grounds?
It was electric, Shanaka. The game was on a different level, if I could say, because both teams, they were conditioned well, and both teams came into the game with knowing that they can't drop this game. And for CRNFC, I think the bounce of the ball went their way on that day, and they somehow managed to get the victory over Kandy Sports Club. I think they started off well with a couple of gifted tries, you could say, and after that their defense came into the play and they held firm. But for Kandy, they will be actually really disappointed with how things have panned out. Before that as well, they got a couple of close wins. The most closest one against Havelocks, 27-22. So things have not been going to the way Kandy would have expected it and hoped it to go for them in 23-24. and after that as champion sides they usually manage to get over the line. They did, but on the 7th time of asking they did not manage to do that against CRNFC, so they will be really disappointed. But now there is another opportunity, 3 more games for Kandy to bounce back. But for the CR and the other clubs who are chasing the pack, I think they will be hoping that Kandy manage to drop a couple of games more.
Yes, it's going to be very important for Kandy not to drop any other games until they play CR in that final week of the tournament, because then the tournament will still be alive, and if they manage a bonus point victory, which is not something that is beyond them, it's going to be a really impressive last weekend that we're going to go into. But standing in their way, CH and Havelocks came very close up in Nittawala with a very young team. Sudarshana, a team that man for man is probably a little lower in the pecking order than CRNFC, but coming back to Havelock Park, that's going to be an important one. And also for Havelocks looking ahead to their game against CR, they were very close in the first round, and now with the Mathis Trophy on offer, Havelocks are the team that I think a lot of people, if they were betting men, will put their money on.
Yes, indeed. I think Havelocks came close against both Kandy and CR, but unfortunately fell short. I think they are lacking a bit of experience with all the youngsters in their side, but now with the first 7 games under their belt, I think the players will know what to do when at the crucial points and to find themselves in the right places. But I think out of the top 4 teams, if there is another team that can beat Kandy, it is Havelocks undoubtedly. And I think if they are to do so in these next 3 games and put on a good show to make this cup segment competitive, I think Havelocks need to bring their A game, and their forwards too will have to lift their game up, and their backs will have to support them a bit more than they did in the first 7 games.
One thing that CRNFC will be going back to the drawing board about is their scrums, Romario. I thought they got quite lucky, and Kandy were a little unlucky up in Nittawala, because there were times where Kandy were very dominant in the scrum, and there were times also that Havelocks were quite dominant in the scrum, and CR will be a little worried about that particular set piece. Their line out came good with the return of Adisha Veeratunga, but again for Havelocks as well, they have Shehan Dias as well as Ganithu Veerasinghe, who are excellent line out exponents. So those set pieces have been pretty good in the first round, but need to be better in the second round, especially for CR. But the rest of the teams will feel that if we get this aspect of the game right, we might be able to mount a challenge.
Yes, the set play. I think CR, they got a few calls that went their way up in Nittawala. Unfortunately for Kandy, their props did not do their duties legally, and they managed to assert themselves, but illegally or legally it was up for the referee to call, and he decided that the calls went against Kandy. But now, as you rightly said, I think CR and Havelocks will need to bring their A games in their set play as well, and if they manage to do so, I think there will be a bit of a few upsets lined up in the couple of weeks to come.
Yeah, that's a lot to look forward to when we come into that second round. So 4 games each, or 3 games each that each of these teams will be playing in the second round. We'll look forward at what we can expect in that second round, and of course look further back at the first round as well when we come back after the break. Hello and welcome back to our look back at this first 7 weeks of action in the Nippon Paint Rugby League here on the Papare.com and of course on Dialogue TV. We're looking forward to that 3-match second round that we have on offer from this next weekend. But let's look back at some of the outstanding performers of the first 7 weeks. Here are the top try scorers of the league so far. In top position with 6 tries, the CRNFC number 8, Lasindu Ishan Karunathilaka. With 5 tries, CHNFC hooker Prasad Madhushankar, and with 5 tries also is Hiranta Pereira from Police SC, plays at centre at the moment, and Lasanta Kumara and Ashan Bandara, both of Army, with 5 tries each. So unsurprising really that we have 2 forwards leading the try scoring stakes, Romario. So Lasindu Ishan with 6, he's been the beneficiary of quite a few good line out ploys in the 22, but he's also scored some tries from some really intense pick and go execution from CRNFC.
He has been really strong this season, Shanaka, and coming from a couple of meters out, there is no chance of stopping him with his low body position and the way he drives through. And he has got some good support as well from his pack mates at CR. And it's good to see that a forward is leading the way. And also Prashant Madhusanka, of course, the hooker from CHNFC. He finds himself at the tail of the mall on a couple of occasions, and he goes over quite often for CHNFC. So I think that's the reason why, and also with the wet conditions in the first couple of games in the first round, I think the forwards have dominated this try scoring list, and I think that's why you find a couple of forwards along with some backs in it.
Prashant Madhusanka has been a top try scorer of the season in previous seasons as well, so expect him to really mount a challenge in this second round. But Lasantha Vishan has been superb in attack, Romario, but maybe his defense is something that he has sacrificed a little bit, because we used to see him over the ball making a lot of turnovers, but there are a few younger players at CR who are doing that job for him, which means he can now maybe concentrate a little bit on the attack.
Yes, they have brought in a couple of flankers from the school arena as well. Shehan Kalaniagoda, who comes in off the bench, and he does some good work at the breakdown. He won a couple of turnovers in Kandy as well, I can remember. And of course Adhikaram from the former Royalist, he also does some good work in the tight. So as you said, he has sacrificed a bit of work in the defense, but he's reaping the rewards in attack for CRNFC.
Two Army players, we'll talk about Hiranta Pereira in a moment, but two Army players, Lasantha Kumar and Ashan Bandara. Lasantha playing in the 13th channel, Ashan Bandara circulating between 10 and 15. So 10 tries coming from two players for Army, but that's really not been enough. It's not been a team performance.
Yeah, their forwards and their backs haven't been able to click on too many occasions, and unfortunately for them, they could not put on an 80-minute show on most of the games. And I think that's where at the end, at the latter part, they fall off, and that's where when a lot of teams go rally ahead. But also Army, on occasions, they don't start well as well. So that also does not help their cause in securing games. But I think it's just the first season that their new coach has come in, Shamri Nawaz, and I think he will be building on for the next seasons to come, and I think they will be quite a potent force coming the next few years.
Yes, there's quite a bit of experience in the squad as well, so their forwards also pretty well drilled. So it's surprising that Army find themselves where they are on the table, but let's see what they can bring for us in the second round. Hiranta Pereira was an absolute sensation, Romario, when he was in school at Isipatana. He was a big player. He had all the attributes, good kicking boot, nice fend on him, and good distribution skills as well. But he's fallen away a little bit, as some of those big Isipatana players have. And any reason for that? Why we find himself in the top 5 try scorers list, but he'll be wanting to do better.
Yes, unfortunately he put on a bit of weight during the last couple of years, and that hasn't helped his cause. But this time around he has trimmed down a bit, and he is coming back to the potent force he was over the school arena. But it's not too good to see that he is not using his boot too often this time around, like during the past, and he is more of a ball carrier now, and they will be looking, I think they are looking to play him in a different role, and that's why he finds himself up here. But I think he has a bit to work on during these couple of years that are ahead to come.
Well, lots of competition, of course, in the try-scoring championships. Lasantha Vishan will want to keep his place. Prasad Madhusanka closing in on him. Let's see how that little race pans out as we come into the last 3 games of the season. The top point scorers, of course, we have the top players here. Unsurprisingly, the table leaders are represented at the top by one of their kickers as well, Thenuka Nanayakara with 59 points. Tharinda Ratwatta in second place, just 1 point behind on 58. Hirusha Netmina from CHNFC 55 points, 43 points from Ashan Bandara for the Army, and Samuel Madhuwanta of the Havelocks with 42 points as well. Interesting to see, Romario, that Samuel Madhuwanta, probably the most pedigreed kicker of the lot, he finds himself in 5th place. Tharinda Ratwatta, of course, Kandy don't score a lot from penalties. but he has been putting those kicks over when it comes to conversions as well. And Tenu Kanane has had plenty more opportunities, and the way CRNFC have played this season, you would expect him to be closer to the 70, 75, 80 point mark at the moment. But one thing that CRNFC have really squandered a little bit is points off the tee, both in conversions and penalties.
Yeah, they have missed quite a few kicks off the tee, and I think their coaching staff and backroom staff will not be too happy how the misses have happened. But I think there will be yet another couple of opportunities for Tenu Kanane to build on, but Tharinde is racing closely with him. And of course, Samuel Madhuwant returning after a couple of years through injury. So he's just settling in, but I think he too will hope to up his game come the super round.
Hiru Shanetmine has been an unsung hero for CHNFC as well, getting his points off the boot. And of course, Ashan Bandara from the army, he's one of the top try scorers as well as one of the top point scorers. He'll be hoping to nudge the national selectors as well with that all-round performance. So those are the top point scorers. Expect that big battle between Tharinde Ratwatta and Tenu Kanane. It's not long ago that I think Tharinde Ratwatta got close to 100 points in a season, so it shows that the kickers have slipped off a little bit, but let's wait and see what they have to offer for us in the second round. We'll be back in a bit.
It's quite an atmosphere. Rugby's greatest championship. Ball to set. Goes on. Marcus Smith must be on the away line. This time, go Scotland. Good work from Durham and the winner. This is astonishing. That is a moment.
Welcome back to this magazine show of the Nippon Paint Rugby League 2023-24. We've had an outstanding 7 weeks of rugby. We've looked at the top point scorers, try scorers, and of course the key games of the first round. Let's look at the key games of the second round as we go forward. So as you said, Romario, 3 games for Kandy away from home. How are they going to approach that?
I think it'll be quite uncomfortable for Kandy to travel down to Colombo week in, week out. And I think this is an opportunity for the teams in Colombo to just upset the apple cart. And with Kandy, of course, they will be playing their first game at Racecourse against CHNFC. So a bit of a different field, a wider and a longer field that they will be coming in, and the wind too might get under their skin. But I think Kandy, if they are the champion side, they were the unbeaten champions from the previous season. So usually when champions go down once, they regroup and they come out hard. Usually a wounded team, they come out hard. So I'm sure CHNFC will have a bit to face come this weekend. But having said that, I think that also could be an opportunity for CHNFC to maybe bite back.
Well, absolutely, and there's no disputing the experience that Coach Sanath Martis has in his field, and I'm sure he will be sensing what Kandy will throw at them, and he will have prepared his charges just for that. So it's going to be an interesting battle, because Kandy are an experienced team with an inexperienced coach in Fasil Marija, whereas CH is an inexperienced team with the most wily experienced coach in Sanath Martis. So that's an interesting balance that we have going on there as well. But looking at Srinath Surya Bandara, what he brought to the Kandy team in terms of urgency when he moved from 15 to 9 up there in Nittavala, Romario, is that something that you think Marija will be thinking about making a little bit more permanent?
He will be hoping to do that, but the biggest question mark will be for how long can that intensity be sustained by Srinath Surya Bandara, because when he comes there, he of course raises the pace a notch, but how will the forwards manage to keep up with it is the question mark, because conditioning has come under a bit of fire. Kandy have come under a bit of fire for their forwards having a bit too much of weight around themselves. But I think if he comes there, he should come there and then go back to 15. It should be varied throughout the game without just staying at 9 and then or staying at 15.
So some things to think about for the Kandy attack, and of course for everyone who plays them, their defenses as well. The games to look forward to, Romario, especially this first weekend, Havelocks taking on CRNFC. That's going to be a match for the ages.
Yes, indeed. I think there is a trophy as well on the line in this game. So Havelocks are trailing in the as they lost the first game to CRNFC. So they will have to put on a show, and of course they are playing at home. So they will have a bit of home advantage on their sides, but unfortunately the game is not played under lights, and it's played at the normal 4 p.m. kickoff. So that might come in favor of CRNFC. But having said that, Havelocks on their own paddock, they are a different beast.
Yeah, they certainly are. They love to defend Havelock Park, just as Kandy love to defend Nittabula. Then another game, of course, CRNFC have 2 away games out of 3. They only host Kandy at home, and CHNFC at Racecourse. Not going to be an easy task for them either. But that final weekend, we're looking at Kandy still with that 1 loss. Perhaps Havelocks have done CRNFC a favour. We never know, or perhaps Havelocks have done Kandy a favour by CRNFC losing. So that's something that we've got to look at. That final weekend is going to be all to play for, though.
Yes, it's going to be yet another final week thriller if Kandy and CH manage to just hold on to their games and come back head to head, because then that will be a decider. The title decider will come back to London Place. I think that could be a fitting note to end if you're a CR fan and they manage to win it there at London Place.
Yes, it will be a fantastic moment for CRNFC. They'll think it's a year too late. They would have loved to do it in their centenary year last year, but they certainly won't be complaining if it comes in their 101st year. Thanks a lot for joining Romario and myself on this look back at the Nippon Paint Rugby League 2023-24. It certainly has hotted up, especially since that upset win in the last weekend of the first round. We'll look forward to 3 outstanding weekends of rugby coming up on the Papare.com and of course on Dialogue TV. We'll see you all at the games as well. Thanks very much for joining us. From Romario and myself, it's goodbye for now.